Pregnant wife confronts millionaire husband after catching him in a hotel room with Mistress. Ariana's heart pounded like a wild drum the moment she stepped into the opulent lobby of the Waldorf Astoria in New York City. Pregnant and already weary from her journey, she prayed this was all just a horrible misunderstanding. But a tiny voice inside her refused to be silenced. Her billionaire husband, Donovan Blackwood, wasn't the man she thought he was. The hushed conversations of the guests around her blurred as she walked, each step more terrifying than the last. With trembling hands, she pressed the elevator button, haunted by images of what she might find. If her suspicions proved true, little did she know that a night of revelations lay just a few floors away, revelations that would shatter her world and change everything she believed in. Ariana Blackwood was no stranger to glamour. From the moment she met Donovan Blackwood, she had been thrust into a world of swirling lights and champagne galas, private jets, and glittering events. She had always marveled at how effortlessly Donovan commanded attention in any room, his presence like a magnet drawing people in. At first, she thought she had won the lottery of love, a man who was not only outrageously successful, but also seemingly devoted to her. Yet in the quiet moments, a small, persistent ache of uncertainty lodged in her heart. Donovan's power and prestige came with a tidal wave of responsibilities and secrets she wasn't entirely privy to. Ever since she discovered she was pregnant, Ariana had found herself especially sensitive to every shift in Donovan's demeanor. Perhaps her heightened instincts were a maternal gift. Perhaps they were merely the overflow of hormones. But she could not deny what she sensed. Donovan had grown distant, preoccupied. Phone calls in hushed tones, abrupt changes in his schedule, and those inevitable nights he didn't return until dawn. Each piece of evidence tugged at her more forcefully than the last. Until one day, the final straw arrived. It was a Monday afternoon, a serene day, or so Ariana had hoped. She had just finished her prenatal checkup and was excited to share the ultrasound photos with Donovan. But when she tried to call him, he didn't pick up. Hours later, she found a suspicious receipt from the Waldorf Astoria in New York City, tucked inside his jacket pocket, dated the very morning he'd claimed to be in Boston for a business conference. Alarm bells tore through her thoughts. She had never known Donovan to be sloppy with details, so the mere presence of that crumpled receipt, left where she might find it, felt almost like a distress beacon, or a challenge. For days she wrestled with how to approach him. The idea of confronting Donovan terrified her. She wasn't just Ariana anymore, she was a soon-to-be mother, carrying not just her own hopes, but also the hopes of her unborn child. If something was truly amiss, how would that impact their future? Finally, the tension became unbearable. Ariana booked a train to Manhattan, determined to face the truth head-on. Though her friends worried, cautioning her about the stress that might harm her baby, Ariana knew she had to do this. Part of love, she believed, was a willingness to risk heartbreak for the sake of truth. The next day, she found herself stepping into the hushed luxury of the Waldorf Astoria, her heart a tangled mass of dread and anticipation. As Ariana crossed the threshold of the Waldorf Astoria's front doors, the weight of her fears bore down on her. Everything about this world was so polished, and grand, fresh floral arrangements towered in vases. Marble floors shimmered under crystal chandeliers, and expertly dressed bellhops greeted her with warm smiles that felt jarringly at odds with her internal turmoil. At the reception desk, a polite clerk asked how he could help her. Ariana could feel her hands tremble as she gave Donovan's name, half expecting the man to blink in confusion. But the clerk merely tapped at his computer and said, "Yes, Mr. Blackwood has a suite on the 28th floor. Would you like me to ring him for you?" Ariana hesitated, her throat constricting. If Donovan was truly up there, If he was indeed meeting another woman, it wasn't a conversation she wanted played out over a phone call he could ignore. She needed to see him, look him in the eye, read the truth in the set of his jaw or the shift in his gaze. Summoning her courage, she lied to the clerk about wanting to surprise her husband. The clerk, touched by the notion of romance, gladly showed her the way to the elevator, offering an access keycard without hesitation. The ride to the 28th floor was excruciating. Each ding of the elevator felt like a heartbeat counting down to her possible destruction. She recalled how Donovan had once told her, during their whirlwind courtship, that he loved her because she didn't flinch in the face of adversity. She would need all that grit now. Stepping out into the plush, carpeted hallway, Ariana felt as though she were drifting in a dream. Everything moved in slow motion. She pressed the keycard against the suite's lock, her heart hammering so loudly she thought it might tear free of her chest. With a muted click, the door opened. In the dimly lit entry hall, Ariana immediately noticed 2 wine glasses resting on a sleek glass side table. A thick crimson silk dress, far more risque than anything Ariana would choose, was draped casually over the back of a chair. The sight of it set her pulse racing. She stood there, breath shallow, unsure whether to call out Donovan's name or press forward in silence. Then she heard it, the muffled sound of a female voice from the adjoining room, followed by Donovan's unmistakable laugh, a low, rich sound that once brought her comfort and now struck her like a dagger. She could hardly breathe. Visions raced through her mind, Donovan tangling his fingers in another woman's hair, whispering the same sweet words he once told Ariana, making a mockery of their marriage vows. Feeling an almost out-of-body sensation, Ariana glided toward the source of that laughter. The bedroom door was half ajar, and through the gap she could see Donovan's broad shoulders, his shirt unbuttoned to reveal the toned lines of his chest. Next to him, clad in lace lingerie that matched the hue of the silk dress outside, was Cassandra Brooks, a name Ariana recognized from whispered rumors. The shock almost knocked her off her feet. As the color drained from her face, Ariana had no doubt left. It was real. It was happening. The moment she had feared was unfolding before her very eyes. A wave of disbelief mingled with anger surged through Ariana. Her throat tightened to the point she could barely speak. The betrayal was so stark, so vivid, she wished she could close her eyes and vanish. But that wasn't an option. She was here, pregnant with Donovan's child, and he was caught in the very act of betrayal. She found her voice, shaky though it was. "Donovan," she said, stepping into the room without waiting for an invitation. The two lovers whirled around, Cassandra clutching the bedsheets to cover herself. Donovan's face, however, was a tapestry of conflicting emotions: surprise, guilt, anger at being discovered, and something Ariana couldn't quite identify. "Ariana," he stammered, standing up so quickly he nearly knocked the nightstand over. A half-empty bottle of champagne wobbled on the tabletop. This isn't what it looks like." Ariana almost laughed at the absurdity of that line. "Don't insult me," she managed, voice taut. "You've been lying. I trusted you, Donovan. And this is how you repay me?" Donovan hastily reached for a robe draped over a chair, his eyes darting between Ariana's trembling figure and Cassandra, who had retreated into a corner in a state of half undress. He ran a hand through his dark hair, face pale. "We should talk somewhere else, away from distractions." Cassandra scoffed, folding her arms. "Oh, so I'm just a distraction now?" "I've been more than that to you, Donovan." Her sultry voice cracked with bitterness. Ariana felt a flash of humiliation. The mistress already sounded like she had staked a claim on Donovan. In that moment, Ariana's hand instinctively moved to rest on her pregnant belly. All the dreams she had once nurtured of a loving family, of Donovan proudly holding their newborn came crashing down in shards around her. And there she stood, in the same room as his mistress, forced to confront a future that had already splintered. "Let's not do this in front of her," Donovan whispered. But Ariana had had enough. "No," she spat, mustering an inner strength. "We're doing this now, right here. I came all the way to find you because I deserve answers." Tears glistened in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Why, Donovan? Am I so worthless to you that you couldn't be bothered to stay faithful through my pregnancy?" Time seemed to stand still as Donovan looked at Ariana with an odd mixture of desperation and frustration, apparently caught between saving face in front of his lover and acknowledging the pregnant wife he'd wronged. But Ariana noticed something else flicker across his expression, an arrogance that had always lurked beneath the surface, a sense of entitlement that she had willfully ignored for too long. "Look, Ariana," he said at last, straightening his spine as though to reclaim his formidable stature. "You knew who I was when you married me. I have responsibilities, demands on me that you can't understand." She felt as though he had slapped her. "And that justifies cheating on me with another woman while I'm carrying your child?" She stepped closer, ignoring Cassandra's presence, ignoring the humiliating setting. "You once told me everything you built was for us, for the family we create together. Was that just talk to keep me quiet?" He flinched. "I never said it was easy," he muttered, sidestepping the question. Ariana watched the man she had adored slip further and further away, replaced by a stranger who seemed incapable of remorse. She realized in that instant that the marriage she had cherished might have been propped up by illusions all along. Their argument escalated, voices rising in the plush hotel suite. For a moment, Ariana thought about her baby, worried that this stress might hurt the child. But she couldn't stop now. Everything she stood for demanded she see this through. Donovan insisted it was only a momentary lapse, while Cassandra smugly interjected that Donovan had promised her a different life altogether. In the midst of the chaos, Ariana felt her cell phone buzz in her handbag, snapping her back into awareness. She took a measured breath, steadying herself enough to say, "I'm leaving, Donovan. This ends now. Whatever we had, it's dead because you destroyed it. I will not let you drag me down any further." Cassandra took a step forward, her gaze locked onto Ariana with a cruel curiosity. "So you're just going to walk away, just like that?" Ariana felt a surge of protective fury. Placing her hand on her belly, she responded firmly, "I'm walking away to save myself and my child from a man who doesn't deserve either of us." She turned on her heel, marched out of the suite, and slammed the door behind her. The echo reverberated through the corridor, mingling with her silent tears as she waited for the elevator to take her away from the devastation. Little did she know that this confrontation was only the first in a series of shocking developments that would test every fiber of her strength and character. Once on the ground floor, Ariana found a discreet corner in the lobby where she could gather her thoughts. She couldn't bear the pitying eyes of strangers. Her phone buzzed again. Ignoring it initially, she finally glanced at the screen. Multiple missed calls from her best friend, Felicia, who had been anxious about this trip. She answered on the fifth ring, her voice trembling as she explained what had just happened. Felicia insisted she come straight to her apartment on the Upper East Side. Though Ariana's knees felt like liquid, she forced herself to stay strong for the baby, if not for herself. After hailing a cab, she slumped into the back seat, her body going numb as the cityscape whizzed by. New York felt like an unforgiving labyrinth of towering buildings and relentless traffic. She always thought she thrived in its electric atmosphere, but now it felt as though the skyscrapers were mocking her crumbling life. She arrived at Felicia's stately building, feeling like a ghost of herself. The doorman, recognizing Ariana from previous visits, discreetly opened the door. "Felicia, A petite brunette with sharp features softened by genuine concern ushered Ariana upstairs. The moment the door closed, Ariana fell into sobs. She recounted the humiliating images seared into her memory, Donovan leaning into Cassandra, the smell of expensive champagne mingling with the betrayal in the air. Felicia's lips thinned in anger. "I'm so sorry, Ari. I never trusted him completely, but I never imagined he'd do something so vile. Especially now, with you pregnant." Ariana clutched at a throw pillow, her sobs subsiding into a defeated hush. "I can't go back to him. He lied to me, Felicia. For all I know, there have been dozens of Cassandras. How could I have been so blind?" Felicia laid a gentle hand on Ariana's back. "You believed in him because you loved him. Love has a way of making us see the best in people. You're not to blame." Yet Ariana felt a crushing guilt. She had noticed small warning signs, inconsistent stories, cryptic phone calls, a fleeting flash of annoyance when she asked too many questions. Now, with the gift of hindsight, every one of them loomed large, screaming that Donovan's duplicity was as vast as his fortune. Felicia offered Ariana a guest bedroom. Exhausted from the emotional storm, Ariana tried to rest. But as she lay on the plush bed, all she could envision was Donovan's face, his arrogance, his sense of entitlement. The next day, she would have to face new challenges: her unborn child's future, the potential legal entanglements of divorcing a billionaire, and the heartbreak of public scrutiny. Being Miss S, Donovan Blackwood had come with perks, but the downfall would be equally grand in scale. The hours slipped by as Ariana's mind spun with worry. Yet through the fog of despair, a new resolve sparked. She wouldn't let Donovan's betrayal define her or her child's life. She thought of the old Ariana, the one who was independent and resourceful, who had chased her own dreams before she ever met Donovan. That woman still existed, somewhere beneath the heartbreak. In the days that followed, Ariana found herself inundated with calls, some from Donovan, others from tabloids that had caught wind of a rumored affair. She changed her number to escape the constant intrusions. Felicia helped her through the labyrinth of Manhattan's legal scene, introducing her to a renowned divorce attorney who specialized in high-profile cases. The man, Winston Clark, was calm and precise, as though no scandal could rattle his steel composure. Seated across from him in a sleek glass-walled office, Ariana felt both terrified and determined. She explained the situation, her voice quivering when she detailed the extent of Donovan's wealth and influence. Winston absorbed every detail, nodding sympathetically. "We have grounds for divorce under New York law," he assured her. "Adultery is a valid reason to file. But these cases can become complicated, especially when we're dealing with a billionaire, well connected in legal and social circles." Ariana's stomach twisted. She knew Donovan wouldn't easily relinquish his reputation or finances. But what about child support, custody arrangements? She realized with some anxiety that Donovan might try to keep their baby away from her out of spite or arrogance. Winston seemed to read her mind. "We'll have to be strategic. Document everything. Take care of yourself and your baby first. Don't let him manipulate you. He can be as powerful as he wants, but the court will prioritize the well-being of the child." Her relief was short-lived, overshadowed by the knowledge that Donovan always found a way to bend the world to his will. He had built his empire from scratch. If he wanted something, he usually got it. Ariana recalled how he boasted about outsmarting ruthless competitors, even bribing officials in less regulated countries to ensure lucrative deals. If he had done it before, what would stop him from resorting to equally shady tactics in a divorce battle? When she left Winston's office, Ariana felt the stale Manhattan air cling to her skin like a shroud. The city that once symbolized opportunity now felt predatory. She saw it in the eyes of paparazzi camped outside the building, snapping pictures like vultures anticipating a carcass. Ariana shielded her belly and hurried to a waiting car. Felicia had organized a private driver, fearing the chaos that might arise from Ariana's newly minted status as a scandalized billionaire's wife. Back at Felicia's apartment, Ariana sank into a plush sofa, exhaustion weighing her down. Felicia handed her a mug of chamomile tea, concern etched across her face. "You look done in. Any updates?" "A divorce attorney is on board," Ariana said, sipping her tea carefully. "But this is just the beginning. Donovan has the resources to turn this into a nightmare. Part of me worries he might refuse to let me go. He once told me he never lets go of what's his." Felicia frowned. "That's exactly why you need to keep the press on your side. If the public sympathy aligns with you, Donovan won't get away with bullying you in court. Reputation is everything to him." The words rang true. Ariana realized that in Donovan's stratosphere, public opinion could hold more sway than any legal argument. For the sake of her child, she resolved to go public with her side of the story if Donovan resorted to intimidation. She wouldn't hide, not anymore. Still, a hollow ache settled in her chest. Part of her craved some acknowledgement of guilt, some heartfelt apology from Donovan. She wasn't naive enough to think they could repair the marriage, but she wanted to believe there was still some shred of decency left in the man she had fallen in love with. Yet the silence from Donovan's end was deafening, aside from a few meaningless texts demanding to know her whereabouts. He didn't mention the child. He didn't mention what had happened at the Waldorf Astoria, and he certainly never uttered the word sorry. That night, Ariana found herself unable to sleep, haunted by memories of how she and Donovan first met. She remembered walking into an art gallery event, an ambitious project manager fresh out of college, enamored with the idea of climbing the corporate ladder in New York. Donovan had swept in with an entourage of associates, capturing the room with his charm. Their eyes locked for one electric moment, and soon he was by her side, praising the same painting she admired. That evening, he confided he was about to launch a groundbreaking tech venture. Ariana was dazzled. Over the following months, Donovan courted her with an intensity that made her feel like the most important woman in the world. He flew her to exotic locales on a whim, introduced her to industry magnates who treated him like royalty, and showered her with gifts. It was a fairy tale, and Ariana, in her youthful optimism, believed every promise about building a life and a family together. Even when they argued, his apologies came in the form of grand gestures like a key to his penthouse or an exclusive dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant. She now realized how carefully crafted those gestures were, meant to dazzle her into silence. Ariana tried to recall signs of his darker side. She remembered the first time she heard a rumor about him seducing a female business associate to land a major investment deal. He had shrugged it off, claiming the rumor was an attempt to smear his name. Back then, she'd blindly accepted his explanation, grateful he was confiding in her. In retrospect, she suspected that was just one of many real transgressions disguised as malicious gossip. The echoes of the past fueled her current resolve. Ariana was determined that the man who had shattered her trust would not shape her future. With a renewed sense of courage, she decided to take the next step, returning to the penthouse she once called home, gathering her essential belongings, and formally moving out. It was a terrifying prospect. Donovan could be there, or worse, he might have changed the locks. But Ariana needed to reclaim her life from the wreckage. The next morning, Ariana arranged for a police escort, just in case Donovan decided to intimidate her. Winston had suggested it, cautioning that the worst behavior often surfaced when abusers felt cornered. Ariana wasn't sure if Donovan would stoop that low, but she wasn't taking any chances. She arrived at the penthouse on Fifth Avenue, a lavish building with doormen who recognized her immediately. They looked surprised, probably aware of the scandal but uncertain of the specifics. Up on the 40th floor, Ariana used her key, relieved to find it still worked. She stepped into the expansive foyer with its gleaming marble floors and sweeping skyline views. Memories of happy dinners, laughter, and quiet mornings flitted through her mind like ghosts. The place felt eerily silent. She ventured into the living room, noticing a half-drunk glass of whiskey on the coffee table. Donovan's laptop was open, papers strewn about. It looked as though he had been working, or perhaps drowning his sorrows, but he was nowhere to be seen. In the master bedroom, Ariana found her clothes still hanging in the massive walk-in closet. Feeling strangely numb, she began packing suitcases, maternity wear, comfortable shoes, personal documents she needed for the baby. Her wedding dress, stored in a protective garment bag, hung in the corner like an unwanted relic. She stared at it for a long moment, recalling the day she'd walked down the aisle, convinced she was stepping into a brilliant forever. Without a second thought, she tore it off the hanger, stuffed it into a large plastic bag, and added it to the items she planned to discard. She felt no sentimentality, only a bitter pang. Midway through her packing, she heard the front door open. Panic seized her, but she forced herself to remain calm. Donovan's voice echoed through the halls, laced with agitation. "Ariana, I know you're here." She braced herself as he entered the bedroom, his gaze flickering over the suitcases. A flash of anger crossed his face, but he tempered it, adopting a tone that was almost pleading. "You're leaving. Just like that." She avoided his eyes, focusing on folding clothes she'd already thrown on the bed. "There's nothing left for me here, Donovan. You made sure of that." His jaw tightened. "I messed up, okay? I'm sorry." The words sounded forced, devoid of genuine remorse, "but I've been trying to call you. I want to talk." Ariana placed a hand on her belly, centering herself. "What is there to say?" "You cheated on me." Repeatedly, from the looks of it. "I will never trust you again." Donovan took a step forward. "Listen, I might have had other women, but that doesn't change the fact that you're my wife. And you're carrying my child." She felt her anger flaring. "In case you haven't noticed, we have a serious problem if you think you can hold me hostage to that. This child is mine as much as it's yours, and I won't subject them to a toxic environment." An odd, unreadable flicker crossed Donovan's face. "But what about our future? Our child could inherit everything I've built. Do you want to throw that away?" His tone suggested he believed she might be foolish enough to reconsider. "You really think money solves everything, don't you?" Ariana whispered fiercely. "You really think this is about material comfort? I can't be bought off that easily." He took another step closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Ariana, you belong here with me. If you go through with this divorce, it will get ugly. I can't guarantee I'll be cooperative." The veiled threat in his words sent a shiver through her, but she refused to let him see her fear. "That's exactly why I'm leaving," she said, zipping up the last suitcase. She stared at him, memorizing the face that had once brought her so much joy. "I don't know if you ever really loved me, but I loved you once, and maybe a part of me always will. But we've reached the end, Donovan." For a moment, he looked vulnerable, like a child who had been abandoned. But the flicker of softness faded as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the cold, calculating mask Ariana had come to recognize. He gave a short nod, as though acknowledging a business deal gone sour. "Fine," he said curtly, stepping aside to let her pass, "but don't say I didn't warn you about the consequences." She didn't dignify that with a response. Gathering her suitcases, she walked out. The door clicked shut behind her, and as she waited for the elevator, she heard a crash, something inside the penthouse smashing against a wall. She swallowed hard, but her hands remained steady. She had done what she needed to do. There was no turning back. Over the next few weeks, Ariana focused on her health and her future. Felicia's apartment became her refuge. Winston filed the divorce papers, initiating a legal earthquake that everyone in Donovan's social and professional circles would feel. Media outlets snatched up the story, branding Donovan a philanderer and painting Ariana as a wronged wife. Overnight, she went from relative anonymity to a media darling, at least temporarily. But for every sympathetic article, there were gossip columns speculating that Ariana was simply trying to secure a massive settlement. Online trolls claimed she was just another gold digger, ignoring the fact that Ariana had been self-sufficient before marrying Donovan. The barrage of opinions and rumors felt relentless, but Ariana consoled herself with the knowledge that the truth was on her side. Strangely enough, she also discovered new allies in unexpected places. Anna Gold, an influential journalist from the New York Times, reached out for an exclusive interview. Initially, Ariana refused, wary of the publicity. But after several days of persuasion from Felicia and Winston, she agreed, hoping to set the record straight. The interview turned out to be a turning point. Dressed modestly, Ariana greeted Anna in Felicia's living room. The journalist came armed with tough questions, but she treated Ariana with empathy and respect. Ariana spoke openly about Donovan's betrayal, the emotional toll of discovering his infidelities, and her concerns for her child's future. She didn't vilify Donovan outright, but she made it clear that she refused to be a silent victim. By the end of the interview, Ariana felt a measure of relief she had claimed her narrative. When the article went live, it stirred a wave of public support. Donations for single mothers' charities soared after Ariana mentioned her intention to help others in her situation. Her social media, once sparsely used, exploded with messages of encouragement and solidarity. For the first time in weeks, Ariana felt hope blossom, yet her relief was tempered by Winston's warning. Donovan might retaliate, he said, pointing to a new wave of legal paperwork Donovan had filed. He's claiming you're unfit to be a mother due to emotional instability. He's also contesting spousal support, citing a prenuptial agreement. Ariana felt her blood run cold. She'd signed that prenup in a haze of love and trust, not caring about the fine print. Fear pricked her, but she squared her shoulders. I won't let him bully me. We'll fight back. Winston gave her a half smile. That's the spirit. And remember, the court's priority is the child's welfare. Donovan can't simply buy the judge. Knowing the storm hadn't yet fully broken, Ariana clung to the small, bright flame of public sympathy and the knowledge that she was doing what was right. Her baby, now over 5 months along, gave her a sense of purpose she had never known before. That little life inside her represented a clean break from the lies and duplicity of Donovan's world, a chance to start anew. While Ariana focused on forging a future for herself and her child, Donovan found himself grappling with a series of unexpected crises. Rumors abounded that key investors were pulling out of his latest venture, wary of associating with a man mired in scandal. The public fiasco with Ariana was only part of the story. Whispers circulated that Donovan's mistress, Cassandra, had been feeding privileged information to a rival corporation. One breezy afternoon, Donovan's longtime business associate, Colin Porter, requested an urgent meeting. Sitting in the sleek conference room of Blackwood Enterprises, Donovan could hardly mask his irritation. Colin wasted no time. Donovan, he began, his tone grave, we have a serious problem. The board is worried about the direction of the company. Public opinion has turned against you, and the shareholders are getting nervous. Donovan rolled his eyes. Public opinion, he muttered. Since when does that affect the bottom line? It affects it when your personal scandal is making front-page news, Colin said sharply. Investors are worried about your judgment. This Cassandra situation, the divorce, it all looks very messy. And now we've got a new problem. Cassandra seems to have sold or leaked proprietary information about our upcoming project. Our main competitor, Titan Tech, just announced a suspiciously similar product. We're exposed, Donovan. Donovan leaned back in his chair, fury bubbling under the surface. That's impossible. Cassandra is a lot of things, but disloyal isn't one of them. Colin sighed. Clearly, you don't know her as well as you think. We have digital footprints, emails, traced back to her personal account, suspicious bank deposits. The evidence is overwhelming. The betrayal sliced through Donovan. He had assumed Cassandra was merely a distraction, an indulgence. But to think she had used him, gleaning strategic secrets along the way, he felt a bitter taste in his mouth. Anger clouded his thoughts, but one reality stood firm. His empire was under threat. We need damage control, Colin insisted. We need public apologies, maybe a restructure of leadership. If you step down temporarily as CEO, it might calm the waters. Donovan clenched his fists so hard his knuckles turned white. Step down? Are you insane? This is my company. Your company is on the verge of collapse, Colin shot back. Or do you want me to sugarcoat it? I'm telling you what the board expects, and they have enough voting power to force you out if you resist. Donovan found himself cornered. Rage churned within him, but he was a savvy businessman, and a part of him recognized that fighting the board head-on could be disastrous. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. I'll issue a public statement, maybe step aside for a short period, but make no mistake, this is a temporary concession. Colin gave a curt nod. Good, we'll handle the announcements. Meanwhile, we need to find a way to plug the leaks and reassure investors. As Colin left, Donovan stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office. The city sprawl below him. He'd once felt like a king surveying his domain. Now he sensed his reign crumbling beneath him, threatened by the very scandal he had created. Ariana's face flashed in his mind, and for a moment he wondered if she had orchestrated all of this. But he dismissed the notion. She didn't have the cunning or the motive to sabotage him on such a scale. No, this was his doing. His arrogance had driven him into Cassandra's arms, and now Cassandra had slit his empire's throat. He slammed his fist on the desk, the reverberation a feeble attempt to shatter the reality pressing in. For the first time in years, Donovan felt truly powerless. While Donovan battled corporate turmoil, Ariana continued to attend prenatal classes at a local community center. She was determined not to isolate herself in fear or shame. Surrounded by other expectant mothers, she felt a sense of normalcy, a reminder that her life was more than just a tabloid headline. During one such class, Ariana struck up a conversation with another pregnant woman named Marisol. They clicked instantly, discovering shared anxieties and joys about impending motherhood. Over time, Marisol became a close confidant, offering Ariana a safe space to talk about everything that had transpired with Donovan. I've heard rumors about him in the business world, Marisol admitted one afternoon, sipping a bottle of water. He's ruthless, but I never imagined he'd stoop so low in his personal life. Ariana shrugged, feeling the baby shift inside her. Sometimes I wonder if this is karmic justice. Donovan built his empire at any cost. Maybe he's finally paying the price. Marisol reached out to squeeze Ariana's hand. You did nothing wrong. He's the one who chose to betray you, and karma isn't punishing you, it's clearing a path for you and your baby. Ariana blinked back tears. Though her days were peppered with renewed strength, she still had moments where sorrow crept back in. However, each conversation with Marisol, each supportive note from Felicia, and each text from Winston updating her on legal progress helped her see a light at the end of the tunnel. Then came a day when Ariana was woken by a frantic call from Winston. We just received word that Donovan is stepping down as CEO of Blackwood Enterprises, he announced, barely containing his shock. The board forced his hand. This is big, Ariana. It changes the entire dynamic of the divorce. She sat up, heart pounding. How so? He's losing the central pillar of his influence, Winston explained. Without that position, his net worth and power to fight us in court diminishes. If the company's stock plummets, he might have to settle fast to preserve whatever assets he can. The news left Ariana stunned. She couldn't deny a pang of satisfaction. Perhaps Donovan's empire wasn't immune after all. But she quickly reminded herself that her goal was not revenge, but rather ensuring a stable life for her child. Still, it felt like the universe was aligning in a way that echoed her own sense of justice. In the following weeks, Donovan's downfall continued. Cassandra disappeared from the public eye, rumored to have fled the country after pocketing an enormous sum from Titan Tech. Blackwood Enterprises faced internal reorganization, with Donovan's longtime rival, Archer Mills, stepping in as interim CEO. Ariana watched the news with a cocktail of relief and astonishment. The man who once towered like an untouchable force was now struggling to salvage any shred of his reputation. The court date for the divorce finally arrived. Ariana entered the courthouse in a simple black dress that accommodated her growing belly, her heart pounding. Donovan was already there, flanked by a team of high-powered attorneys, all wearing the same grim expression. The tension in the air was palpable. Winston guided Ariana to a seat, whispering last-minute reassurances. "Remember, stay calm. Answer only what's asked. We have evidence of his infidelity, plus his admitted business unscrupulousness is working against him." Donovan wouldn't meet Ariana's gaze, but she noticed the shadows under his eyes, the tense set of his jaw. He looked like a man haunted by consequences he never believed he'd face. The hearing began with opening statements, and Ariana steeled herself through hours of grueling legal back and forth. Donovan's lawyers attempted to paint Ariana as opportunistic, claiming her interest in motherhood was overshadowed by a desire for financial gain. But Winston expertly dismantled each argument, brandishing proof of Donovan's affair, his precarious business dealings, and Ariana's consistent, documented attempts to address their marital issues before deciding to leave. By mid-afternoon, the judge asked Donovan to speak. Rising slowly, he appeared more subdued than Ariana had ever seen him. Gone was the brash man who believed the world belonged to him. "Your Honor," he began, voice edged with fatigue, "I know my marriage to Ariana has been overshadowed by recent events. I won't deny the mistakes I've made, but my concern now is ensuring the best for my child. I'm prepared to offer financial security, but I want shared custody." Ariana's chest tightened. Despite his downfall, Donovan wasn't going to vanish from her life or from the baby's life without a fight. She turned her gaze to Winston, who stood. "Your Honor, my client supports the child's relationship with Mr. Blackwood, provided the environment is stable and safe. However, we have concerns about Mr. Blackwood's history of volatile behavior and extramarital affairs. Ariana is requesting primary custody with reasonable visitation rights for Mr. Blackwood, contingent upon proof of rehabilitation or therapy to address his behavior." A flicker of outrage crossed Donovan's face, but he quickly masked it. The hearing continued, the judge signaling they'd reconvene after reviewing all evidence. Ariana left the courtroom, feeling equal parts exhausted and resolute. The final decision wouldn't come for weeks, but the preliminary signals from the judge leaned in her favor. Outside, reporters swarmed, camera flashes momentarily blinding her. She held her head high, Winston and Felicia by her side. No matter the swirling chaos, Ariana felt one certainty: she had survived Donovan's betrayal, and she would continue to protect her child no matter the legal tangles ahead. A month passed. Ariana was deep into her third trimester, her belly heavy and her spirits guarded yet hopeful. She spent her days preparing for the baby, decorating a nursery in a modest rental apartment she found near Felicia's place, attending the final round of prenatal classes and working closely with Winston to finalize the divorce settlement. Then came the final court date. Donovan arrived alone, looking leaner, as though he'd shed both weight and the last vestiges of his once unshakable confidence. The judge's verdict was concise. Ariana would receive primary custody, Donovan would have visitation rights, provided he complied with counseling sessions for anger management and accountability. The prenuptial agreement limited spousal support, but the court mandated child support based on Donovan's still sizable net worth. In a surprising twist, the judge cited Donovan's recent corporate scandals and personal irresponsibility to justify awarding Ariana the Manhattan penthouse, a move to ensure the child would have stable housing in the city, should Ariana wish to live there. Ariana's eyes widened at that last stipulation. The penthouse was a symbol of Donovan's lavish lifestyle, a fortress of his success. She wasn't even sure she wanted to live there, but the significance of the judge's decision was monumental. Donovan stood rigid, gripping the wooden table. Ariana braced herself for an outburst, but none came. Instead, Donovan nodded once and spoke in a low, defeated tone. "I accept the court's decision." After the hearing, Ariana found herself in a deserted hallway with Donovan. Their attorneys were engaged in final paperwork, leaving them momentarily alone. Ariana's heart pounded, uncertain how this encounter would go. She cleared her throat. "I didn't expect the judge to give me the penthouse. Honestly, I'm not sure I want it." Donovan looked away, his jaw clenched. "It's rightfully yours now. Use it if you want, sell it if you don't. I won't fight it. I have bigger problems." They stood in heavy silence. Ariana felt an odd swirl of pity and lingering hurt. This was the man she had once adored, who had become a cautionary tale of hubris and betrayal. She noticed a faint tremor in his hands, a sign of how far he'd fallen. A flicker of sincerity crossed his expression. "You deserve better than what I gave you. I was too arrogant to see what was right in front of me." She swallowed, emotions churning. "I hope you get help, Donovan. Not for me, but for our child. They deserve a father they can look up to, or at least not fear." He nodded, eyes distant. "I'll try." The words were spoken so quietly she almost missed them. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving Ariana standing in the echo of footsteps and regrets. Life after the finalization of the divorce was a whirlwind of adjustments. Ariana made the decision to sell the penthouse. Though the judge had granted it to her, living there felt like inviting the ghosts of a painful past. The sale netted her a considerable sum, enough to purchase a comfortable home in a quieter neighborhood and set up a trust for the baby's future. Amid the flurry of real estate transactions and final legalities, Ariana went into labor a few weeks earlier than expected. The contractions hit late one night while she was sorting through baby clothes. Felicia rushed her to the hospital, and after 10 intense hours, Ariana gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Holding her child for the first time, Ariana was overwhelmed with a sense of awe and gratitude that eclipsed all the pain Donovan had caused. She named him Leo, symbolizing strength and courage. As she gazed into his tiny, searching eyes, she felt a profound shift in her world. This was the dawn of a life no longer tethered to betrayal. Donovan came to see Leo a week after the birth, accompanied by a social worker. He brought a small stuffed lion and stood awkwardly near the hospital crib. Ariana allowed him time alone with the baby. Despite her lingering anger, it was important to her that Leo have a chance, if it was safe, to know his father. The visit was brief, and Donovan left without making any grand gestures. Ariana took it as a small sign of respect. Maybe he was finally learning the humility that had eluded him for so long. In the weeks that followed, Ariana read headlines detailing Donovan's continuing fallout. His forced exit from Blackwood Enterprises became permanent, and his stake in the company was diluted to cover legal settlements tied to Cassandra's betrayal. Meanwhile, Ariana received heartfelt messages from people who had experienced similar betrayals. Some she knew, many she didn't. She became a quiet symbol of empowerment, though she never sought the limelight. One day, she got a call from an acquaintance who worked at a luxury car dealership frequented by Donovan. He mentioned Donovan had traded in his collection of exotic cars to cover debts. Ariana couldn't help feeling a twinge of astonishment. Once upon a time, Donovan's garage was a testament to his larger-than-life persona. Now, it seemed everything was being stripped away. Karma, it appeared, was meticulously exacting its toll. With every new whisper of Donovan's financial losses, Ariana didn't gloat. Instead, she felt a bittersweet sense of closure. Justice had a way of coming full circle. Ariana's life took on a serene, if busy, rhythm. She woke in the middle of the night to feed Leo, lulled him back to sleep, then spent her daylight hours juggling diapers, pediatric visits, and the small joys of early motherhood. She discovered an inner reservoir of strength she hadn't realized was there. Though she missed the comfort of a stable partner at times, she was proud to be forging a new identity: mother, survivor, and advocate for her own happiness. Felicia remained a steadfast friend, visiting often to lend a helping hand. Marisol, from the prenatal classes, became part of Ariana's support network, their children born just weeks apart. On lazy afternoons, they strolled through a local park, exchanging stories of sleepless nights and marveling at how quickly their babies were growing. Meanwhile, Ariana's divorce attorney Winston checked in periodically, ensuring Donovan continued to meet his child support obligations. Donovan's visitation schedule was modest weekend afternoons, supervised by a court-appointed observer, until his counseling was complete. Ariana found it odd to see the once commanding billionaire so subdued, but she appreciated the sense of calm this new structure brought. Leo thrived, an endless source of wonder for Ariana. She took countless photos, shared milestones with close friends, and kept a private journal, writing letters to her son for him to read when he was older. In those letters, she poured out her hopes and dreams for him, as well as the lessons she'd learned from her own experiences, chief among them the importance of self-worth and the knowledge that real love never walks hand in hand with betrayal. Several months later, Ariana attended a charity gala for single mothers, an event organized by an advocacy group she had come to admire. She went as a guest, happy to support a cause close to her heart. It was her first formal outing since giving birth, and though she felt a bit out of practice, she donned a simple but elegant dress and tried to enjoy the evening. During the cocktail hour, she mingled with donors and volunteers. To her surprise, she spotted Donovan across the room. He was dressed in a conservative suit, standing alone near a display of philanthropic sponsors. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Ariana felt all the old tensions resurface. But she stayed calm, offering him a polite nod from a distance. A few minutes later, Donovan approached. "Ariana," he said softly, "I didn't expect to see you here." She raised an eyebrow. "Same. You're supporting single mothers now?" He glanced around, looking more sheepish than arrogant. I started volunteering a few months ago. Part of my counseling included giving back. Turns out it's not as insufferable as I thought." She suppressed a smile. "How altruistic of you." He nodded, swallowing. "Listen, I want to thank you for letting me see Leo. I'm trying to do better. The counseling is rough, but it's made me realize how deeply I sabotaged my own life." Ariana studied him, searching for signs of the old Donovan. A glimmer of humility rested in his posture, something she had never witnessed before. She wasn't ready to forgive him entirely, but she felt a sense of peace that they could at least be civil. "I appreciate that you're making the effort," she said simply. They stood in awkward silence for a moment before a representative from the charity approached, ushering Donovan away to meet some potential donors. Ariana watched him go, her emotions swirling. Life had a curious way of delivering lessons at unexpected times. Here she was, at a gala celebrating single mothers, forging a future on her own terms, yet faced with a shadow from her past. A man who was finally learning humility too late. Back home, Ariana settled into her living room, the hum of the baby monitor comforting in the background. She reflected on the night's encounter. Seeing Donovan in this new, muted light made her realize just how far she'd come. The woman who once cowered at the prospect of confronting her unfaithful billionaire husband had transformed into someone who could face him without fear or yearning. She walked to Leo's crib, gazing down at her sleeping son, his gentle breaths an anchor to the present. Softly, she whispered, "You and me, kiddo, we've got this." The old Ariana might have added, "I wish your father could be here too," but the new Ariana recognized that their life was whole, even if it looked different from the original dream. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and Ariana's life continued to bloom. She started freelancing for a design firm, using her organizational and creative skills to earn a steady income. She also co-founded a small online support community for women going through high-profile breakups or divorces. The response was overwhelming. Women from around the world shared their stories, found solidarity, and encouraged one another to keep fighting. Meanwhile, Donovan worked to rebuild his life, albeit quietly. His visits with Leo became more consistent, always supervised for now, but Ariana noted the gentler way he held their child. She saw glimpses of the man he might have been, had power and greed not consumed him. Yet she reminded herself that redemption was his journey to undertake, not hers to facilitate. A year after her initial discovery at the Waldorf Astoria, Ariana found herself invited to speak at a women's empowerment conference. She prepared a short speech about resilience and trusting your intuition. Standing on a small stage in front of a supportive crowd, she recounted carefully and without gratuitous detail her journey from starry-eyed newlywed to betrayed wife, and finally to self-reliant mother. The audience's applause was thunderous, several women wiping away tears. When the conference concluded, a handful of organizers presented Ariana with a small plaque acknowledging her contributions to empowering women facing adversity. She was moved to tears, hugging them and thanking the crowd for their support. Walking off stage, Ariana felt lighter. The betrayal that once dominated her every thought had been transformed into a lesson painful, yes, but ultimately illuminating. She no longer saw herself as Donovan's victim. She saw herself as the architect of her own destiny, forging a future guided by love for her son and respect for herself. Over time, Ariana's legal dealings with Donovan diminished into routine matters regarding Leo's custody. She rarely saw him outside of scheduled visits, and while they maintained a civil relationship for the sake of their child, Ariana knew her true path lay elsewhere. Free from Donovan's shadow, she nurtured her career, her friendships, and most importantly, her bond with Leo. Whenever she thought about that night at the Waldorf Astoria, she no longer felt the sharp stab of betrayal. Instead, she felt gratitude for the revelation that set her on a new course. She hoped Donovan would find his own way to heal, but she wouldn't wait around for him to do so. Late one summer afternoon, as the sun cast a warm glow over her living room, Ariana picked up Leo, who was now a babbling toddler with bright, curious eyes. She carried him to the window, pointing at the rooftops. "See, baby boy, the world is out there, waiting for us." Full of possibilities, Leo giggled, nuzzling against her. Ariana smiled, pressing a gentle kiss to his forehead. She realized how far she had journeyed from that fateful confrontation, and how bright the horizon looked. Indeed, she had discovered a power more resilient than any heartbreak, more enduring than any betrayal, love for herself and her child. And so, Ariana's story stands as a testament to resilience and transformation. Though her marriage began in a swirl of romance and privilege, it ended with heartbreak and betrayal. Yet through her pain, she forged a strength she never knew she possessed. Standing firm against Donovan's power games, she reclaimed her life, her child, and her future, proving that self-worth can conquer even the deepest wounds. If you've been moved by Ariana's journey, if you've felt a spark of inspiration from her courage, we invite you to be part of our community of support and empowerment. Share this video with someone who needs encouragement, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to this channel to stay connected with more stories that illuminate the power of hope and determination. Together, we stand tall, reminding each other that even after the darkest nights, a bright dawn awaits.